Recording in progress.
Good evening, everyone. It being 7 o'clock and a quorum present, I'm going to call this meeting of the Planning Board to order. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2025, an act extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency and signed into law on March 28, 2025, this meeting will be conducted via remote and in-person participation. Members of the public who wish to participate in the meeting may do so in person or via the Zoom meeting application. The Zoom link and code IDs are available on the town website. First on our agenda this evening are our administrative notes. We begin with minutes. We have minutes from September 10 and 24 and October 8 and 18 and 22, all of 2025. I leave it to the will of the board as to whether or not they wish to take these separately or jointly.
Jointly.
Okay, jointly. Can I have a motion then?
A motion to support the minutes for September 10th, September 24th, 2025, October 8th, October 18th, and the 22nd of 2025.
I have a motion to approve the minutes. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, I don't believe Mr. Donaldson is on Zoom. So, okay, he had indicated that he may not have been able to make it. So all of us in the room, we can vote by raising hands. All in favor? It is unanimous. Next on our agenda are covenants, plans, and releases. Begin with PB 654, Sheridan Home Builders, Inc., 553 Wareham Road. Definitive Rural Density Development, Map 120, Lot 4, an endorsement. Any questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion from Mr. Mann to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Mr. Grandy. Questions? Discussion? Seeing none, call for the vote. All in favor? Unanimously approved. Next, we have B543 ADM Agawam Development LLC, Lot Release Use Area 14, Map 117, 27 lots. Do we have any questions regarding that? Seeing none, I'll call for a motion.
Motion approved.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? It is unanimous. Also, B543, ADM Agawam Development LLC, Lot Release Use Area 16, Map 115, 3 lots. Questions? Seeing none, I'll call for a motion.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and second. Any
No, not on this next.
Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? It is unanimous.
So if I could,
Please,
so we
Mr. Hartman.
also, while we're in this section, have a request for the 15 lots to be released for the Wareham Road project. So we'll have the balance of those lots as collateral moving forward. For future releases, there'll be additional bond money posted. But again, the request right now is to have 15 of those lots released, and the document is here.
Okay. Do we have any questions regarding that request for the release of 15 lots? And those are lots that we've approved and the
You just
time-
vote, yeah, the ones you just voted. That's why I wanted to do it as
Okay.
part of this.
Okay. So we have a request for release of that. Any questions regarding that? Seeing none, I'll call for a motion.
Motion to support release.
I have a motion for the release. Support?
Second.
And a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? It is unanimous. Next, we have street name approval, PB 654, from Sheridan Home Builders seeking approval of the quaint Bumblebee Drive, the cute Turkey Trail, and the ever-adorable Ladybug Lane.
Those are
Map
up.
120, lots 4, 1-13, and 1-15. Any questions? Seeing none, I'll call for a motion.
Motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Call for the vote. All in favor? Unanimous.
Excuse me, Chairman.
You do the Form A?
There's two A&Rs on the agenda as well.
There are two A&Rs.
That was my fault. I
You
distracted you.
distracted me. We'll move on to the Form As. First, we have A 4904, 29 Widgeon Road, CNN Family Realty Trust, map 071, lot 008, lot line adjustment. Any questions from members of the board? Seeing none, I'll call for a motion.
Motion to support.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Call for the vote. All in favor? Unanimous. Next, we have A 4905, 9 Wampanoag Road, Sheridan Home Builders, Inc., map 056, lot 077-010E. Questions from the board?
Just a question on the spelling. Wampanoag is not the, as I see it, the accepted spelling. If that's what the intent was, I don't know if that's a mistake or not.
I did not. Can you repeat that? I couldn't understand what you were
I
saying.
believe the question was, is that spelling correct?
Oh, yes, it is. Yeah, it's a little unusual, but, yep, yes.
Any other questions from the board? Mr. Smith? Mr. Smith, why don't you turn your microphone on, please? Mr. Smith, your microphone?
Your microphone's off, sir.
I'm sorry. Could you walk through which parcels are being divided? It's difficult to
Yeah,
tell.
so it's one single parcel that you have, and if you look at the layout, actually, we could even put it up on the screen, I think you had it. So it's one parcel that, it looks like that Wampanoag Road is the frontage. There are two houses, and we actually, as staff, spent a lot of time trying to identify and confirm that those houses existed prior to zoning. So they did exist prior to 1953. And so they have a house on the left and a house on the right. Yeah, that's one house and then the other house. So there's a process in the 81L where the state says if you have two buildings that existed prior to subdivision zoning, you're allowed to separate those, or prior to subdivision control, you're allowed to separate them onto separate lots. So these two houses have existed, and they're just simply placing each house on a separate lot. I would note that the law says buildings. So if they had come in and tried to do this, say, separated a garage and a house, it's something that we would try to discourage. You have limited options as a board, but these are clearly two separate residential dwellings. So they're using that 81L provision to put each house on its own separate lot. And again, you can see that whole outline of the dark is the current lot, and they're really basically running one lot line right down the center of the frontage, which looks like Wampanoag Road, but there's no easement or layout for that road.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I'll call for a motion.
Motion to endorse.
I have a motion to endorse. Do I have a second?
Second.
Further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor? It is unanimous. Next on our agenda this evening are public announcements. First, I am pleased to report that thanks to the efforts of Ms. Lind, the Town of Plymouth has received a $67,500 community planning grant to develop zoning and guidelines to encourage development of smaller homes. These are homes such as tiny homes, cottages homes, and other compact housing styles. This is in keeping with the overwhelming sentiment of the residents as expressed during the master plan process, and we'll be looking forward to having a consultant work with the planning department in order to prepare some guidance for this board to review and bring forward, hopefully, to town meeting. Next, we have the Master Plan Committee meeting on December 10th at 6 p.m. Meeting will be in person here at Town Hall and virtual. Topics of discussion will be the outline of the master plan chapters and the upcoming community open house, the proposal for which is that it will be a virtual-only event in an effort to try and get further participation from members of the community who have a difficult time getting out in the evenings. Finally, this is the last meeting of our planning director, Lee Hartman. Lee has served this town in varying capacities for some 30 years. Including for a brief stint as our interim town manager, something which I believe still gives him flashbacks, and sent him to therapy. It would be impossible to go through all of the things that Lee has done for the town during that time. So let me just say that Plymouth has been fortunate to have the benefit of his knowledge of the town, his experience, and enthusiasm for planning, and his willingness to work with anyone in the interests of our community. Those of us who have been fortunate enough to work with Lee know his abilities to help guide and direct things, to carry out the goals that we set, and to sometimes steer us when we go a little bit too far astray. We will miss his professionalism as well as his very dry sense of humor. Lee, on behalf of this board and its many predecessors, I just want to say congratulations on your retirement. Thank you very much.
So if I could, I'd just say too, it's been an honor. The boards I've worked with are incredible. You know, I don't like the I think it's we and it's a team. And I raised my family in this town. It's my town, and it's been such an incredible career. I'm probably the most fortunate planner in the United States to be able to have worked in this town for as long as I have. So I want to thank the town of Plymouth and thank the board too for making this such a enjoyable journey I've had. Thank you.
Through the chair, I just wanted to thank Lee personally, because as the senior member of the planning board and working with Lee for the past 22 or 3 years, I haven't been here the whole 30, Lee, but pretty close. Anytime I asked him any questions or needed any help, he was always there. He helped all the members of the board, past and present. And I just wanted to sincerely thank you and wish you all the luck in the world, and I'm sure I'll see you again. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Moving to our agenda. Next, we have a public hearing, which was continued from July 23rd, 2025, September 24, 2025, and October 8, 2025. It's B535 37 Sleepy Hollow Drive, Michael and Elizabeth Ann Sawyer, and Sawyer Builders, Inc. We have a request for continuance set forth. I think that, you know, the board certainly has no problem with granting the continuance, but Mr. D'Ambrosio, did you want to come up for a moment?
Unless you need me, but I'm listening.
We'll vote, and again, the requested continuance was put forth, so I don't see that as an issue. But we do have residents who keep coming because these are on the agenda, and they are never sure as to whether or not something is or isn't going forward, and I sympathize with that, because we can only say that, yes, it's been requested, yes, we anticipate, but we never know what's going to happen. We appreciate the fact that you're continuing to work, knowing that this is a somewhat difficult and contentious issue. So perhaps we can come to some sort of an accommodation by which this gets withdrawn without prejudice, with the agreement that no new fee is necessary upon refiling.
Yeah, no, I thank you for the record, Rob D'Ambrosio, D'Ambrosio Law here in Plymouth. I understand and appreciate what you've said, and that's very reasonable. I mean, it's certainly not our intention. I kind of wondered, I said, why are there so many people here? I actually forgot that that, what you just said, this was being continued, so how would everyone know? And that's why they showed up. And for that, I do apologize, because I know, coming out here is not, it's not without a little effort. So anyhow, it's a fair point. We're not trying to unduly drag this out, or certainly make people show up for no reason. It's taken a couple more twists and turns even since the last time, as we kind of peel back the onion, so to speak, and explore options. So I think that's a fair suggestion. That way, I think when we do come back, I guess we would just pay the notice fee, I suppose, which is fair and reasonable, and that way we could, not have people kind of being on yellow alert, waiting for this thing to pop until we have some clear direction. Because frankly, part of the reason that we've drawn this out is we're not sure if we're going to come back with a different proposal, which would require an amendment at this point, or if we're going to try to, force a vote, which may not go our way on what we have in front of, because last time we were here, as you might recall, we were hopeful we'd have kind of some support for a variation that we couldn't even get a motion. So it's been kind of we've been a little bit adrift here trying to figure out what to do, and some other things have come up. So it's a long-winded, as any lawyer would be, way of saying that's fair, and my client's not here, but that's fine with me, and I can speak for him on that. Thank you.
Okay, so, Mr. Hartman?
So if I could, the motion would be, and the vote would be, to allow the application to be withdrawn without prejudice. And then for the people paying attention to this who are interested, what will happen next, when and if a alternative is proposed, then we will give out public hearing notice, put an ad in the paper, and do a butter notifications again when and if a new proposal is submitted.
Okay. Someone willing to make that motion?
So moved.
Thank you. I have a motion from Mr. Mann. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? And Mr. Bennett has recused himself from that vote, so that's fine. It is unanimous.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr.
And
D'Ambroso.
thank you, and sorry, guys. It didn't even occur to me that we're inconveniencing you, so sorry about that.
So again, as Mr. Hartman said, that this will not just get under the rug. In fact, just the opposite. Now, a new notice to abutters will go out, so there'll be actually some extra effort to make sure that the community is notified if and when there are any new proposals that come forward. And again, I want to thank the members of the community who have come out consistently to discuss this issue and to make sure that we're as informed as possible regarding things that are going on. Next on our agenda this evening, we have an update from the Pine Hills.
Good evening. Deb Sedaris for the Pine Hills.
Good evening.
So I do have, tonight is an informational presentation only. We are not expecting or asking for any vote or decisions from the board, but this is an update to both address kind of where we are with respect to the satisfaction of the OSMID development plan conditions, given that we are nearing the end of our project. And also, I thought I would take the opportunity to just also give a little update on how the year has progressed for the Pine Hills. So with your permission, I would like to distribute the informational memorandum so folks can follow along.
Great, thank you.
Yep. So I think I hope as folks might have noticed, we've been marking our 25th anniversary of beginning to sell homes in the Pine Hills. Really, the permitting process began a good 3 years before that, but we thought the sort of celebration of when we really started to sell homes and sell commercial land for businesses was really the nice sort of time to mark. And so we hope folks have had a chance to participate in some of that celebration. Our iconic red barn is still our iconic red barn, still the main entry to the Pine Hills. And to this day, I think, again, really signals our community to folks. So as you may know, just a little bit of background, the Pine Hills, oops, wrong direction. The Pine Hills came about as a result of a master plan. And that master plan was created under the Town of Plymouth Open Space Mixed Use Development Bylaw, or OSMD. And as a part of that process, that master plan was eventually adopted by vote of town meeting as the development plan for the Pine Hills. And that development plan, which really superseded and replaced a series of special permits, phased special permits that were initially created as part of the initial master planning process, is the document that now controls and really governs the obligations that Pine Hills LLC took on to build out the Pine Hills. And so again, what I'd like to do tonight is really just focus on the conditions that we have had to meet, those that we have satisfied, and others that remain open and will not really be fully satisfied until the project is entirely completed. Again, just to remind folks, this is the master plan graphic. This is the final version, circa 2020, which reflects some of the amendments. There were 6 amendments to the initial development plan, and so this represents the final master plan graphic for the Pine Hills. The butterscotch areas were the areas that were identified as most appropriate for building, and principally residential building. And the yellow area closest to the interchange with Route 3 was the area that was identified for commercial and mixed-use building. And the original master plan contemplated that there could be commercial building on both sides of Clark Road, north and south. But again, the part of the flexibility and the benefit of the development plan or master plan was that it gave us the flexibility to really craft the final plan based on market conditions and based on what the, sort of what seemed most appropriate as opposed to pre-planning every piece of ground. There were, as part of the process of the development plan, we had a special review process that was created by the Secretary of Environmental Affairs for the MEPA review of this project. And like the development plan, it was done in phases. So there was the initial special review process that was approved, and then there were 7 phased review documents that were created and reviewed over the course of the build-out of the Pine Hills. And as well as there were 10 notices of project change. And all of that MEPA documentation and all of the certificates and reports are all on file with the town, with the development, or with the planning office, and are obviously available for folks. But that process was officially completed in January of 2021. That's when the Secretary issued the last phased review document, certificate, which is number 7, and officially kind of closed out the MEPA review process with that final phase. The other thing to note on this master plan graphic was, again, the intention was to begin to identify areas that were likely to be kept as natural open space and not built on. And it also identified where the reserved land would be located, which was a requirement of the development plan that this acreage, 206 acres in total, be allocated to the town of Plymouth and subject to a conservation restriction, and that indeed happened, as well as a parcel on the other side of Clark Road, which was formerly a location that had been identified as a potential fire station location. Again, as part of the conditions of the development plan, Pine Hills agreed to convey a parcel to the town within the Pine Hills Osmond, and the town then conveyed this parcel to Pine Hills, but Pine Hills then put a conservation restriction on it and actually deeded it back to the town. So again, this sort of plan just lays some of that out. It lays out the commitment to have a corridor, a no-build buffer all along Old Sandwich Road, which is shown here in dark green, to conserve the view shed between the rye field, which again here is in green, and the historic Cornish Tavern, now known as Rye Tavern, opposite on Old Sandwich Road. And over here, oops, let me see if I can, there it is. This area that's a little bit darker, that area has been committed as a restricted area for turtle habitat with the natural heritage. And that was a condition as part of the overall Pine Hills project for area habitat. So again, the master plan set out a concept, set out our best assumptions about where building should happen and what type of building, and then also where we should try to maintain our natural open space. This plan is what's been built. It's a little bit hard to see because there's a lot of information on the plan, but in general, I think you can see that, again, that darker green areas that were identified in the master plan, the buffers that were identified, the reserve land, the Northerly Nature Preserve, and these areas are reflect what was intended and what was set out in the master plan originally. One of the changes that occurred was we ended up with really only residential building on the south side of Clark Road, even though that area had been identified as potentially commercial or mixed use. So all of the commercial mixed use really ended up in the what we now call the Village Green District. It had the label of neighborhood green area under the development plan, but it all ended up on the north side of Clark Road as opposed to on the south side. This area here is where the public water supply is, and this area, it's a little hard to see. I don't know if I can I make this, can I zoom in? No, okay. On this side of the road, about in this location, if I'm looking at it correctly, is where the private sewer treatment facility is located. So one of the conditions of the development plan was that Pine Hills was required to ensure that all of the utilities servicing the Pine Hills Osmond would be privately owned and not impact public or municipal resources. And so, again, we fulfilled that obligation by creating the Pine Hills Water System, which includes the pump station here and a storage tank in this location. And also, as part of that system, we were required to and agreed to ensure that there was fire flow and hydrants incorporated into that system. And later on, I'll show you a map that shows all those hydrants. And as well, we were required to create the private sewer treatment facility, which, again, initially, the master plan, allowed for a combination of both on-site septic systems, classic sort of Title V systems, as well as a central system. And again, initially, the thought was that central system would primarily serve the sort of commercial area or the area near the Village Green. But over time, with the agreement of Mass DEP, who issues our groundwater discharge permit, and having worked with the Eel River Watershed, who was one of our abutters here to the north, we eventually essentially modified that permit to provide sewer collection and treatment for almost the entirety of the Pine Hills. There was only one on-site septic system amongst the 3,065 homes, and that's basically because the Mother Nature just didn't make it possible for us to get there to service them. But other than that, everything is on the sewer collection system and is treated, and everything is treated to groundwater standards. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later on as well. So again, what you have here is essentially what the built condition of the Pine Hills is today, and where we have preserved land or have set aside land to be preserved as we get to the closeout of the project. One of our obligations was to create trails that were open to the public throughout the site. This is an example of one of the trails that we have created. We have both paved trails and natural trails. By far, our paved walking trails are the most used amenity of the community, both folks who live in the Pine Hills and folks from who are our neighbors. And it is really one of the distinctive features of living in the Pine Hills. Let me sorry, I got to get closer because I can't see that well. Again, it's a little bit hard to see, and I apologize, but if you can see it, the red lines that are on this plan are the trails that have been paved trails that have been built in the Pine Hills. Again, it's a little bit hard to see, but that's the point of that slide. We also were required to undertake certain historical preservation. The Talcott estate, which was really the Symington estate before Mr. Talcott acquired the property, was the oldest, other than Cornish Tavern, was the oldest existing building within the project. And so we undertook with Mass Historic a full historic assessment of the property after Mr. Talcott's passing and after his life estate ended. And all of that information was cataloged, a full photographic record was taken. We worked with an organization called the Public Archaeological Laboratory, PAL for short, and they did all of the historic and archaeological assessments throughout the Pine Hills, including the Talcott estate and also at Cornish Tavern and in other locations. And all of the artifacts and all of the documentation is stored with them and will be available, in perpetuity for researchers or folks who are interested in the history of this area and the different eras. So here's another picture of this is the back of the Talcott estate or the state home looking towards the pond. One of the interesting features of the Symington Talcott estate home was that it was built such that they could launch canoes out from the bottom of or lower level of the home, and that's what that shows. This is the Cornish, now Rye Tavern. Again, this particular building is actually the oldest structure, dating back to the colonial era. Again, we went through a process with Mass Historic to catalog the condition of the property. It had been altered over time. When we took possession of it, the interior of it really had been entirely modified as a caretaker's cottage. So not much of the original features existed, or they existed maybe behind some walls, but they were significantly modified. But the exterior of the tavern was pretty much intact. And when we went to sort of actually, in a sense, go back to its historic use of being a tavern, which is what it was, we did go through a process of replacing windows and really restoring some integrity to the structure, and doing it in a historically accurate way, approved through the Mass Historic process. And then, as I mentioned, the other piece of that historic commitment or preservation was to ensure that the sort of view relationship or view shed between the tavern and the rye field across Old Sandwich Road would be maintained. In addition, harping back for a second to the sewer treatment facility, one of the things that we had to do with that sewer treatment plant was to create disposal beds for the wastewater. And you can either do that above ground or below ground, but you have to take down a lot of trees to do it. And because we had the rye field here, we petitioned Mass Historic and Mass DEP to be able to, since the trees were not here already, to basically peel back the rye, do an archaeological investigation of the field, which we did, catalog everything, and then actually place underground disposal facilities for the sewer treatment plant under the rye field, and thus maintain, and then grow back the rye and maintain it in that manner. So it is preserved, but it's also serving a dual purpose with respect to the sewer treatment for the Pine Hills. The other obligation that we had was to preserve Old Sandwich Road, both with respect to the buffers on each side of the road, and also the town had determined that they wanted to make sure that it stayed as a dirt road, and so that was a condition of the development plan. And so there is a 300-foot no-build setback on most of the roadway. There is a section where it narrows because it already had narrowed, and then so that's maintained on both sides. And then in addition, part of the way to make sure that that was preserved and not overused is we were required to create a new north-south road that would run sort of parallel to the dirt portion of the roadway and provide people with an alternative rather than going on the dirt road. We were required to do that on the west side, and that is now Stonebridge Road. But we chose to also do it on the east side, and that's Longridge Road. So I'll point that out again on a later plan. Obviously, folks are familiar with Sacrifice Rock. This area is owned by the Plymouth Antiquarian Society. We worked with them to also add a parking area for folks right off Old Sandwich Road, so folks could, because people like to pull over and enjoy the location, and so we gave them some land to be able to accommodate that, and so they now have a little parking area to support folks being able to enjoy that location. This refers back to as I mentioned, the north-south roadways. So again, I apologize, it's certainly probably hard to see, but there is Stonebridge Road, which goes approximately like this out to and connects to the paved portion of Old Sandwich Road. And then over here, approximately something like this, there is Longridge Road. So there are now two north-south corridors that allow folks to avoid having to use particularly the unpaved portion of Old Sandwich Road, the sort of what's considered the historic layout. As I mentioned, we were required to construct a public water supply system. This is the pump house for the Pine Hills Public Water Supply, and this is the underground storage tank. It's mostly underground, and it's about 2 million gallons of storage, and that really helps to provide for the fire flow pressure, to provide for the public safety factor of the public system. And then, as I mentioned, we have hydrants throughout the Pine Hills, and later on there is a plan, or there should be in here. This is the sewer plant, sewer treatment plant, located off Beaver Dam Road. This plant provides, as I mentioned, sewer collection and treatment for just about all of the building within the Pine Hills. We coordinated a little bit with the town. The town at one point was working on a what's called a FOG plan. It's a plan to manage oil and grease. And we had put together a plan, and we had toured with the public health folks and the director at the time, and that fog plan that we sort of came up with became a guide for the town to also implement that type of plan. And here's a sample of the area where the treatment works are at the plant. And there are above-ground treatment beds behind this location off Beaver Dam Road. This is a map that shows the sewer system. There are 27, I think. Can't quite see the numbers, 27 or 28 lift stations throughout the Pine Hills. Some of it's gravity, and obviously some of it's not. And again, where this red dot is where the plant is, and this area are the beds that I mentioned. One of the features of the sewer treatment plant is that there are 3 what are called interceptor wells or capture wells down gradient of the treatment plant and the underground storage beds. And that was a concept and a permitting effort that was worked with the Mass DEP to basically capture the treated effluent that comes, out of the disposal beds, down gradient of the plant. And rather than having that potentially more nitrogen-rich water make its way to Great Island, it's captured and it's used to be the source of irrigation for the golf courses at the Rye, and this Rycroft neighborhood, and this Rycroft pond is the irrigation pond. And as a result, we don't have to add as much fertilizer to the golf courses because the water is considered to be more nitrogen rich. This plan, again, I don't know if folks can see it, but there should be little red dots all over that plan, and that plan is the one that shows where the fire hydrants are throughout the Pine Hills. We've had, obviously, as I mentioned, we provided a location in the Pine Hills for the town to locate a fire station. This was the final fire station in the town-wide public safety plan that had been initiated by Chief Arthur Lamb when he was considered sort of the person who established a professional fire department within the town. Prior to Chief Lamb, it had operated as mostly a volunteer system, which was, again, typical of many rural communities. But the chief really pushed for a professional fire department and for a town-wide plan to make sure that firehouses were located in a way that would ensure that there was good response times to any emergencies. And this was the final station, and the station was actually dedicated in his honor, and I'm talking about him because he's my great uncle, so it was a nice connection. And maybe this is I think this might be the hydrant map, but part of the requirements of the development plan and the master plan was that we work with the fire chief, which we've worked with several fire chiefs, to first of all develop design criteria for our roadways to ensure that town vehicles, emergency vehicles could access and move throughout all of our neighborhoods and all of the roads. And that criteria was modified over time because the size of vehicles and the types of vehicles changed over the 25 years that we've been building. And also, again, the idea that we would have fire flows throughout here and have hydrants located. So we have 1 hydrant for every 3 homes is actually about what it comes out to, which is a pretty terrific ratio. One of the other commitments that we made and worked with the town on was to provide land to the town so that they could erect a public safety communication tower. And so that was a condition that came along a little bit later as we amended the development plan, and this is now located at the top of the Pine Hills, right next to the Commonwealth's fire tower. It's in that location. As I mentioned, one of the other conditions that was a requirement of the development plan was that we initially set aside 350 acres in the Northerly Nature Preserve area, which is this green area in the north, for a northerly nature preserve. And over time, we have agreed to increase that to about 415 acres, and that's what you see here. In addition, as we've, again, come to completion or near completion on the building, we have identified other parcels that really, because of their location and because of their conditions, warrant, we think, a conservation restriction, as well as just open space. And so the dark green areas you see on this plan are areas that we have been in discussions with Wildlands Trust to work on securing a conservation restriction with them that would, again, allow for preservation and stewardship of those areas as not just open space, but as natural open space. And there are trails that exist now through these areas. And again, working with Wildlands Trust, one of the benefits of the conservation restriction is that's what they, it's one of the things that they specialize in is nature trails and preserving trails. And so they'll be able to sort of ensure that that happens. So we are working with them on that process as we speak. Finally, obviously, we have two kinds of homes in the Pine Hills. We have limited occupancy homes, which means those homes have 3 bedrooms, generally with a primary bedroom on the first floor, and not more than 2 other bedrooms. And then we have planned retirement homes, which are homes that were restricted to have at least one occupant who was 55 years of age or better. When I started, I wasn't qualified, but now I am. This particular picture shows one of our planned retirement neighborhoods, one of our newer ones, Birdsong, which these are all single-level homes. They are small homes, so something to talk about with the small home bylaw, perhaps. One of the things that we again tried to incorporate into some of our neighborhoods was at least, like, again, a walking trail here or a little bit of a pocket park that these homes kind of face, but this is really common area, so it's available to anyone who lives in the Pine Hills. Here's another example. This is actually a limited occupancy community home neighborhood called Poets Corner. But again, you see the similar feature of trying to wrap in some shared open space and some green space. And the other thing is, as much as we do have trails, we also do believe it's okay for people to walk in the roads, especially the neighborhood roads, and that in a way benefits in the sense that it helps to slow down cars because they're being shared with pedestrians, which is, frankly, the sort of our history of sharing roads with pedestrians and horses or cars. So, finally, we have under our permit the ability to build out 1.3 million square feet of gross leasable area, commercial and mixed use. And what we have here is a few pictures of the Village Green, which really has become and grown into a significant part of the Pine Hills, not just for residents, but also for our neighbors and folks who live outside of the Pine Hills throughout Plymouth and beyond. This particular photo is obviously the beer garden, the seasonal beer garden, and the buildings over here are the buildings that are along One Village Green North. This is pointing towards the Blueberry Muffin. Also, this particular building was the first commercial building, if you will, in the Pine Hills. It started its life out as a small farmers market building and a small mail building for the very first neighborhoods, and was actually located elsewhere. It was located along One Village Green North and got moved to this location when the Pine Hills Post Office was built later on. And behind those trees is where the Mirbeau Hotel and Spa exists. And then this image is looking towards Village Green South to the Rowan Apartments and the retail that's on the lower level there. And so that's sort of the other side of the Village Green. And then finally, this is looking towards the market and the apartments that are out here. And this particular walkway, if folks haven't had a chance, this is where we display many photos relating to our 25th anniversary celebration. Finally, as part of the Pine Hills, we were required to do annual traffic monitoring, which we have done, and those reports are done every year. The traffic counts are done in the fall, and then those reports are filed with Mass DOT, the Old Colony Planning Council, as well as the town. And the intention of that monitoring was to basically measure throughout the building out of the Pine Hills what impact traffic from the building was having on Clark Road, Beaver Dam Road, and other intersections all along the corridor. And as a result of those, one other comment on that is we always anticipated that at some point there would be impacts to the corridor, and the traffic monitoring was meant to basically help us determine the right timing for when improvements would be necessary. And so with that, we determined, based on that monitoring, that we needed to undertake traffic improvements on Clark Road. And we're doing that in 2 phases. Phase 1, which has been under construction, started in late 2024 and has been under construction throughout this year, was to create and install a signalized intersection at Pine Hills Drive and Clark Road, have that signal also tie into the fire station with a preemption device so that the fire station can now control traffic on Clark Road and Pine Hills Drive when it needs to respond to an emergency. And it created a dedicated left turn lane from Clark Road into the Pine Hills Drive, because obviously there was with just the one lane there was stacking that was going on, and so part of this project was to alleviate some of that stacking and make that turn more comfortable in a controlled situation. And then it narrowed the roadway, and then it sort of continues on to Meeting Way. There's now a left turn lane into Meeting Way as well, though not signalized because there wasn't enough activity to warrant that. But that's essentially the phase 1 of the project. And that is substantially completed. The signals are working. We will have a final walkthrough with the Town Highway Department and engineering probably before the end of the year sometime to get a final sign-off. There is still a little bit of work on the landscaping of the islands that need to get done, and we're in conversation with the town about what they would like to see there, but substantially complete at this point. And there's just some pictures of the improvements and how they have worked. And then there's a second phase to that project. The next phase will occur at the intersection of Landmark Drive, Mainstone, and Clark Road. It's similar to the first phase in that we're going to be creating dedicated left turn lanes into Landmark Drive and a dedicated left turn lane into Mainstone. This will be fully signalized, and there will be a full stop control for pedestrian crossing. This is a very popular location where pedestrians cross from south of Clark Road over to the north side to go into the Village Green. And right now we have a flashing activated light, but not a full stop condition. And so one of the benefits of this phase of the project will be that we'll be able to create that condition. So this is now, the 100% design has been approved. It's now out for bid, for quotes. We expect that we will start the work in the spring. We did try to work through the winter on the first phase. Wasn't such a successful experience, so we decided to just wait until March to start the second phase. And so that's our plan. So, and then we're back to the Red Barn. I think just a few other points. So really, we do have, of all of the conditions I talked about and as outlined in the memorandum, there are really 6 conditions that are not complete because they won't be complete until the project is completed. And again, that's really tracking the total number of limited occupancy homes, which is 2,145, and tracking the total number of permitted limited occupancy homes, which is 920. We continue to track and report, and we will until the end, the land that will be subject to covenant and restriction for open space and buildable area. Again, the development plan and the OSMID zoning required a ratio of 70% open space to 30% buildable area. As we have been tracking that throughout the project, we're more in the 79% covenant open space and about 21% of buildable area, and we do think in the end we're going to end up with far below the 30% buildable and more common open space and common facilities. We also have to track the building of as I mentioned, the gross leasable area for commercial uses. We cannot exceed 1.3 million square feet, and today we have about 144,000 square feet of gross leasable commercial area that we could still build under the plan. We still have to complete our final subdivision roads and infrastructure. And one of the requirements of the development plan and the zoning was that we put in place with the town, with the planning department and the planning board, an escrow agreement, which we have funded as kind of a surety for completing all of that. And we will be back to you in a later date to go through the process of acknowledging what's been completed, and eventually, when it's fully completed, releasing that escrow. As a reminder, again, we were required for all of that roadway and infrastructure to be private and to be forever maintained as private roads and private utilities. And the way that that's achieved is under the recorded covenants and restrictions for the Pine Hills. Those roads and the infrastructure are considered common amenities, and they are maintained by the various different district associations, or the Pine Hills Landowners Association if it's common to the entirety of the Pine Hills. So, and those neighborhood associations and the Pine Hills Landowners Association have to fund and maintain reserves to ensure that there are funds available for repair and replacement. I will say already 25 years in, we have had to, repave certain sections of roadway, and all of that's been done through that process. Finally, as I mentioned, we are in the process, and we would report back when we've completed getting the conservation restriction in place with Wildlands Trust for the Northley Nature Preserve. And again, we will actually be able to do more than that. And then finally, we will come back, report on the completion of the Phase 2 traffic improvements, complete the annual traffic monitoring program, which will continue until we are done with the building. And the other piece to that is we have a commitment to Mass DOT to set aside, which we have set aside, an area for them to undertake a northbound slip ramp if they determine that that's appropriate. And we would enter into a formal land agreement to accomplish that. So those 6 areas, if you will, those are the 6 areas that are still in process. But again, most of what we talked about tonight and as detailed in the plan has been completed. And so that's kind of the state of where we are at. I mean, timing-wise, I'm always asked how much longer. What I can say is, we still have about 314 homes to build and to convey. And if we average about 100 homes a year in new home sales, you can assume there's about 3 years worth of building still to be done. And as I mentioned, whether we will in fact be able to fully build out the remaining 144,000 square feet of commercial use, we do have that permitted to us, and there are some places in the Village Green where we could accommodate some additional commercial, but that's really a function of, of the marketplace, of whether there's an interest in that, but that's a possibility. I will, maybe at this point I'll stop. I couldn't talk about what happened this year, but I feel like that's a lot of information, and I don't know if there's any questions specifically on the OSMID conditions before I say anything else.
Any questions from members of the board at this point? No? Okay,
Okay. Then real quickly, just to kind of let you know what the state of Pine Hills is for the year. So as of November 30th, we have about 3,700 households in the Pine Hills. It's a combination of 2,751 homes, 850 apartments, 80 assisted living residences, for a total of 60 neighborhoods, 21 distinct residential districts, the 4 apartment districts, and then really within the Pine Hills General District, which is kind of the sort of catch-all residential district, there are 42 neighborhoods. So that gives you a sense of the breadth of our residential component. And there are 36 businesses in the Pine Hills. 33 are located in the neighborhood green or village green area, plus the Rye Tavern and the restaurants associated with the golf courses. We have 6 restaurants, 2 banks, 9 medical service offices, 5 recreational businesses, 4 professional offices, and 11 shops and services. And then, of course, we have the Mirbeau Hotel and Spa and Restaurant. The common amenities in the Pine Hills are the Stonebridge Club, the walking trails, as I mentioned. We do have a pond amenity area near Great Island Pond. The Pine Hills Fire Station is a common amenity. The communication tower I mentioned, the water, the sewer systems, and we also do have a Comcast head-end cable building facility within the Pine Hills. We have, again, for this year, so far through the end of November, we have closed and sold 236 homes. 101 of those were new homes, and 135 of those were resale homes. And we have 14 neighborhoods that are under active construction through 2025. And we completed construction entirely in 2 neighborhoods, Pennock Knoll and the Birdsong neighborhoods. In terms of commercial activity, we welcomed Cape Cod Healthcare Urgent Care Center, which opened in July and is in right on Village Green South and part of the commercial space that's associated with the Rowan Apartments. The Hanover at the Pine Hills apartments on Station Drive were actually sold this year in November to Berkshire Valley Fund Limited Partnership, which is not associated with Berkshire Hathaway, but it was a substantial transaction. It closed for $122 million, which was a significant transaction for Plymouth. The Mayflower Beer Garden returned to the Village Green. Our businesses sponsored different activities. Book Love sponsored a monthly seasonal farmers market in the public courtyard off Village Green South. We welcomed Associated Eye Surgeons. They expanded their space at 3 Village Green North. And so, again, it was a positive year on the commercial side. The other thing I'll mention is Aquarian Water Company, which is now the owner of the Pine Hills Water Company. They were a subsidiary of Eversource. Eversource sold Aquarian Water Company of Massachusetts this past year. It was sold to a company called Unitil, which is a New Hampshire utility, but basically continues to operate as it did when it was part of Eversource. And so there was no operational or other changes as a result of that sale. The real estate market overall, I mean, we had a very positive year, as I talked about. We overall had more sales in 2025 than we did in 2024. Frankly, that's a little bit defying of the national sense of the home real estate market. I think there's really two reasons why. One is we're in the Northeast, and so as much as in other places there's more inventory and there's more ability to build in the Northeast, we are constrained in that way, and so the demand for homes outweighs the inventory, and so for that reason, homes still sell pretty robustly. And secondly, the Pine Hills is clearly filling a niche as a lifestyle connection kind of place where people move in and they kind of have a built-in kind of community around them with lots of amenities, and that seems to be something that buyers are looking for and responding to. Our pricing improved from 2024 to 2025, and again, I think that has a lot to do with the same kind of challenges of inventory and demand outpacing what's available in the marketplace. I think the market stabilized a little bit in terms of it's not so much a seller's market, it's more of an even market. Buyers and sellers are more on an even footing than they had been kind of through COVID and coming out of COVID, when it was definitely a seller's market. But nonetheless, you know, the activity's been brisk even into this last quarter, where we usually see things quieting down. So I don't know what that means for 2026. If I did, I'd, you know, be in Las Vegas, but I'm here. We'll see what it brings. So that's just a snapshot of Pine Hills this year. And again, we are certainly at the point where we are getting to the end. We felt it was important to go through and talk about those conditions, explain how we've met the conditions that have been satisfied, and also identify those areas where we need to complete. I would like to personally add my thank you to Lee Hartman. Lee has been part of this process before me, even, and I've been around a long time. Tough but fair always, and always willing to sort of, again, help you think through what you need to think through, and at the same time be mindful of what the law and what zoning and what the development plan required, and we couldn't have done it without you. So thank you, Lee.
Thank you. Any questions from members of the board?
Thank you all.
Thank you. Next on our agenda this evening, we have the appointments to the Earth Removal Bylaw Committee. For those who may or may not be familiar, this is a committee that's being established to explore potential changes to the town's earth removal bylaw. It is an advisory committee to the planning board. It will provide its recommendations to the planning board, which will then be reviewed, addressed, and presented. The planning board's final version will be presented to town meeting, after which the committee will disband. The composition is 9 members, 3 of which will be selected by this board, 3 of which have already been selected by the select board, and 3 others by the committee of precinct chairs. Membership criteria were designed to provide a broad representation in the community, an interest in voices, which meant that all residents, we felt, all members had to be residents of Plymouth. No member could be an elected official, with the exception of a town meeting member. No member could serve simultaneously on any of the appointing bodies. Preference was to be given for only 1 member per organization. That meant advocacy groups, businesses, boards, etc. Applicants needed to identify their affiliation with any such organization or body. And preference was to be given to individuals with experience in the sciences, engineering, legal, legislative, climate science, and similar types of background experience. The committee was designed specifically to include residents who otherwise did not have a say in public policy decisions in the town.
Mr. Belton, may I consider a point of order here?
Yes, please, Mr. Mann.
Thank you. I have concerns about the appointment process I made you aware of the Earth Removal Bylaw Committee. My understanding was that the public notice for applicants stated that individuals had to apply separately to each of the 3 appointing boards to be considered by them. That requirement created a reasonable expectation that each board would choose from its own applicant pool. However, after the first 2 boards made their selections, the remaining pool for the 3rd board included only 3 applicants who met that criteria. The first agenda that was posted for this meeting confirmed that, listing those 3 qualified applicants, but later, the agenda was amended, adding 3 additional candidates. It appears a decision was made outside of a posted public meeting without any public communication to expand eligibility and allow consideration of all the original applicants for the positions, minus those already appointed, regardless of whether they applied for that 3rd board, this board. To be clear, this is not about the qualifications of any of the applicants. It's about what I think is honoring the procedure that was publicly announced, complying with open meeting requirements, and ensuring equal treatment for all who applied in good faith under the rules that were listed on the town's website and in various other locations. Therefore, I believe we should only consider the 3 applicants that qualified for the final 3 appointments, as I understand it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mann. As has been expressed, as explained by Mr. Hartman, both the COPC and the Select Board were expressly told that the applicants that they did not choose would be forwarded to the other bodies. So again, the order was not predetermined. It was based upon who met when. So both of those bodies were told that those applicants would be forwarded. I know that there was confusion among some of the applicants with respect to the process. For example, I know that Mr. Zuckerman believed that he had submitted an application, that his application would be considered by all 3 bodies, and was surprised when the Select Board said, no, it was not before us, and they were very confused by that. I can also tell you that I was contacted by at least one Select Board member who also expressed that they understood that applicants that they did not choose would be forwarded to the Planning Board. But that said, I understand the concern. This is the problem when we end up with these types of committees. We end up with confusion amongst not just the applicant pool, but also those doing the appointments themselves. That said, I believe that, of course, we should hear from as many people as possible who wish to be part of this committee, who have timely submitted applications, but I appreciate your concern. And as a result, what I'm going to do is I'm going to propose that this board vote on whether or not to consider just the 3 applicants or all 5 applicants. So at this point, I'm going to make a motion that this board vote on whether or not to consider all 5 applicants who are present, who have submitted prior applications and who were referred to this board as either having submitted directly to us or not having been chosen by others. Do I have a second on that motion?
Second.
I have that seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All in favor? All opposed? It's 4-1. So the motion carries, and we will consider all 5 applicants. And again, per the discretion of this board, we are going to have Mr. Smith, our alternate, vote with respect to this matter, as we are short one member, Mr. Donaldson, this evening. So with that, I'm going to ask any of the applicants who are here to come up and speak very briefly as to why they wish to be on there and to answer questions. And we'll begin with Mr. Hemberger. Alan Hemberger? Here. Please come on up.
Thank you very much.
Good evening, sir.
Hey, how's it going? Thank you very much for having me in. My name is Alan Hemberger. I live down in Manomet. I'm a hydrogeologist. I just retired from Mass DEP after 30 years. Before that, I was doing hydrogeology with the private sector for several years. In Mass DEP, did a lot of landfill closures, worked with a lot of hazmat cleanups, underground storage tanks, old factories, chlorinated solvents from dry cleaners and the like. I was on CPC Community Preservation Committee in this town for 18 years, the last 15 of which as the clerk. Got to know about town politics, the different interest groups, the stakeholders, the different committees and boards and all. Right now, I'm on Sustainable Plymouth, excuse me, Right now, I'm on the Sustainable Plymouth Water Quality Group. We're working with the different pond associations across town. There are quite a few of them, by the way, trying to help them tackle the nutrient loading and eutrophication and cyanobacteria issues, trying to get them to coordinate with one another. So I'm good at hydrogeology and dirt. Thank you.
So why do you want to be on this committee?
Well, I've got this vast experience. It'd be nice to share it. It's nice to, chip in with the town. I know everyone's heard that a million times, and it's true. You don't want to just sit around and do nothing. I've got many decades of this experience all in this area, and I'd like to keep applying that and helping out the town and work with the rest of the team to do what's good for the town and its citizens.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to open it up to questions from members of the board. Mr. Mann?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Hamburger, one of the main concerns here is a desire to see this happen in a kind of expedited fashion. So I'm anticipating this board will be doing a lot of work, meeting fairly consistently through each month. Do you feel you have the time and energy to give to this? It's going to be quite the haul, I think.
I'm retired. I got nothing but time. So yes, the short answer is yes.
See that, Mr. Hartman? That's what you have to look forward to.
You're going to love it, Lee. You're going to love it. Highly recommended. Yeah, thanks. I'm ready to jump in. The sooner the better, and I can understand we've got to get the show on the road with this thing. So yeah, just let me know, and I'm ready.
One other question. If you were to try to distill down what the issue is with the sand and gravel bylaws that exist, what would you say?
Boy, believe it or not, I haven't really thought about that all that much. I'd say people, the developers, people buying these tracts of land are not following through. The promise is we're going to develop a piece of property, create jobs, give some tax base to the town. They come in, they sell the trees. Hundreds of years to grow those things. They get rid of the topsoil. 10,000 years to get that topsoil. The sand, been here since the glaciations. Let's get rid of that. Oh, shucks, the business deal just fell through. See ya, thanks for the fish. We have our money from the sand and the gravel and everything else. I would say that the main thing is not following through with stuff. There are a lot of mechanisms out there to make sure that people do follow through with their development projects. I think it's a wild coincidence that a couple of these things just suddenly died on the vine.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mann. Mr.
Thank
Bennett.
you, I appreciate the...
No. But
Oh,
we're gonna
more,
go to the
okay.
other. Mr. Bennett? Not getting off that easily.
That's right, we're still going.
I'll talk all night, watch it.
So, what principles would guide you in writing regulations that are clear and consistent and practical for both the residents and businesses that need to comply with them?
Well, the one thing I would do is try to triangulate, see what other towns have done along these lines. There are a number of towns that have earth excavation, a permitting process. I would say the main thing is just make sure we have viable plans that come into place, that if something is going to go to fruition, someone is going to actually build out that property as it is and not hit the road. Again, there are certain screening mechanisms one can use to go about doing that, and also financial assurance mechanisms to make sure that there's some money, kept over in escrow or something, so to make sure they follow through with the stuff, like a bottle deposit or something. You get it back. As soon as everything is constructed, bingo, there's your cash back. Different bond mechanisms and things along those lines.
Thank you. So, what do you feel would be the primary purpose of the earth removal regulations?
The purpose would be to make sure that these businesses can complete what they plan to do and actually create the jobs and the buildings and the workforce that they want to do over Hedges Pond Road, and the folks up here with Spencer Plymouth LLC up by the Triple M facility off the highway that everyone can see. Land gets completely denuded and folks walk away. You're supposed to be creating some business that you promised the town, and it didn't happen. So no tax base, no jobs, and all. So there's got to be some way to make sure that these builders that come in, and we're going to have development, there's nothing wrong with that, we have to have that. Got to make sure that they follow through and not leave.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Mr. Smith?
What role do you see experts, consultants, engineers to the committee?
Excuse me?
What role do you see for any engineering consultants to the committee?
Well, certainly give an extra level of technical expertise. You can't dig down within, say, 4 feet of the groundwater or something. We have a huge overburden here. That's dirt. We have a huge overburden. No one's going to get too close to 4 feet to groundwater. But, a lot of issues like that, very, very technical issues that people like me and my colleagues and engineers and lawyers like Mr. Serkey would know all about. So yeah, they bring in an engineering and a scientific perspective after a career of doing this stuff for a living, and they would know what is fishy and what isn't. So they'd be able to help, guide the town in coming up with a bylaw that is going to be effective.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Grandy?
Through the chair, the other members previously have asked the questions that I would have had. So thank you for coming here this evening and applying.
Okay. You can ask them again if you want.
Say again?
No, I said you can
No,
ask them again.
seriously, what did you say, sir?
You can ask them
I
again.
can ask
if you
again? All right. I will later.
So my only question to you, sir, is what do you see as being the result of a successful bylaw for this community? You've pretty much suggested it, but I want to give you a chance to wrap it up. What would a successful bylaw accomplish according to you, based on your views?
The successful bylaw will ensure the town gets a fair shake with any project that goes on. Make sure that if there is sand removal, it's done in a sustainable way, if that makes any sense. It'd be to make sure the town isn't getting ripped off by allowing a development to go in that never gets built. So it just to give the town something in its back pocket to ensure these things go to fruition, to make sure these jobs are created, these buildings are made, and the town will get a tax base and people will get employment.
Very good. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
I appreciate your time. Thanks for inviting me in.
Next, we have Mr. Peck. Good evening, David.
Good evening. Thank you very much. Briefly on background, most people know it, but a graduate of Dartmouth College and Yale University to become an architect. I was an architect and planner at Children's Hospital in Boston for 35 years before I retired. I'm currently a member, chairman of the town's building committee, an alternate on the Zoning Board of Appeals, and a member of Park Plymouth and PGDC, among other civic activities. I have certainly in both, I was a member of the planning board for a while, but certainly with zoning longer, working with the bylaw, trying to interpret it, understand it, how to make it better. First thing I'd point out is our existing bylaw, 203-2, is not an earth removal bylaw, but it's called the Natural Resources Conservation Bylaw. And to me, the challenge to this committee is certainly focusing on the earth removal, but wall-to-wall natural resources conservation. I would like this group to work on understanding best practices of natural resources conservation from other towns, maybe other states. Our current bylaw isn't bad. And actually has a lot of good features. I think it can be made better. But one of the issues referred to with past applicants is enforcement. So I'm hoping also this process will take a good hard look at enforcement so that the applicants do deliver what they've promised. That I don't think that that's consistently happening. And a final thing I'd add is in the past 2 appointments, the 2 cycles, you have 6 people already picked, at least 2 business people, you have a lawyer, you have a landscaper, you have a civil engineer, and you already have 1 hydrologist. You've got 6, pretty good people already selected, but you don't have an architect and planner. So I'm hoping that my particular skill set and experience can complement the talents already selected and the ones you'll be selecting this evening to put together a really kind of balanced, thoughtful, considerate group that takes a hard look at all the issues we're facing. So, my brief comments.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
I have no additional comments, no questions at this point.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Mr. Grandy?
Okay, so I'm going to ask the question that the chairman asked. At the end of the day, what would you like to see this group do to complete the new language, and what would it include?
Well, I've sort of implied that in where I think this will go, but I think the entire bylaw should be improved with every 21st century and beyond improvement to conservation of our natural resources is one thing. Improved enforcement. Potentially, as I've thought about it, it's really important with the conservation, because instead of earth removal, and this is my experience looking at several of the past projects, a thoughtfully designed cut and fill project to develop a development site with minimum earth removal still provides development opportunities for new business here in Plymouth without a significant extraction. I would like to see alternatives examined, especially for major projects. I'd like to look at, as we know, what we have right now in our current bylaw is kind of 3 levels of project. There's some projects that require neither a zoning permit or a special permit and they have limits on the amount of earth removal and sand. There's a second level which gets a zoning permit but not a special permit, in which, again, there's a good degree of discretion. And then there are a third level of projects that need special permits only, as well as zoning. So I'd like to take a hard look at all 3 levels in terms of what are reasonable, almost as of right, removals, but also take a hard look at the middle level, or perhaps adjust how many levels of review need to be provided. So I have multiple objectives, Tim.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Command?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You've been kind of comprehensive in your assessment of the bylaw and what needs to be done, but one of the things you said, which I'd love to hear a little elaboration on, is that you think in large part this is a good bylaw that could be improved and made more effective. But could you single out one thing about the existing bylaw that you think is good? Worth keeping, perhaps?
Oh, gosh. Well, there's a lot that talks about preservation of topography. It identifies tree diameters that should be preserved, how much disturbance of natural resources is targeted and protected. So that's among other things. They also quantify truck quantities and the hours of operation in sand removal. There's lots and lots of good things in there, which then doubles back to the issue of enforcement. I heard conversation with Lee, issues of citizen concern about truck volumes. At one point, he said, correct me if I'm wrong, he had to send a staff member out to sit in a car counting trucks for hours and hours and hours. Something's wrong with having to take a staff member out of their position to go just count trucks. We need better ways to monitor that. So that's just an example of something that's stated in our bylaws, but is in some ways harder to enforce. So that's an example.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Bennett?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Evening.
Evening.
When drafting these revised or new regulations, how would you balance environmental protection with the economic, potentially tax revenue benefits that some earth removal operations may provide to the town?
Well, I sort of implied that, but I'd repeat that, and that's looking for alternative ways to develop a site, I think, is an important challenge to the developers and the planners, the civil engineers, because in several past projects, the objective of creating a footprint for a developer site could be accomplished without removing great amounts of earth. So as an architect, and I believe in development, and certainly we've heard through the master plan process and through just awareness of the challenges ahead for this town over the coming years. We certainly need to encourage development, but I would like to see the balance to say, how can we get that building site? How can we bring in that new industry and respect the topography and as much of the natural resources as we can? Let's take a hard look at it to find that balance. So that's what I'd like to do.
Because we know that some of that language is already in the bylaw.
Oh, it is in the bylaw.
Right.
But again, that comes to, again, the review, whether we have enough staff internally at the town to help review that, as well as eyes on our committees to review things. The more it's synergistic, the sum is greater than the individual wholes if we can have a good number of people looking at things to try to find the best way.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
No more questions.
Thank you. Mr. Peck, you said that you were hoping that we would bring some balance with respect to this committee. One of the things that we talked about in creating this committee, of course, was to give preference to not having people who are members of the same types of groups. One of the groups that I believe I understand you're a member of is the new Plymouth Stewardship Alliance. Is that correct?
Yes, I am.
And don't we have 2 other members of the Plymouth Stewardship Alliance who have already been appointed by other bodies?
Well, again, knowing what the Stewardship Alliance is, it's a very sort of loose collection of sort of like-minded, environmentally minded people, all from different. It does not have bylaws or a constitution. It gathers with their sort of common care for the environment. So I don't see that as a conflict, Mr. Chairman.
Even though they were the ones who actually initiated the creation of this group?
What's that?
Even though they were the ones who actually initiated the creation of this group, including proposing town legislation?
That's true, but they also, I believe, we are a thoughtful group that then withdrew their motion at town meeting in exchange for working with the town to put together this committee. So I think they've exercised judgment and thoughtful collaboration.
And you're also, you said you're an alternate on the Zoning Board of Appeals, correct?
I'm an alternate there,
Right.
yes.
And we've also, another member of the ZBA has already been appointed to
Correct.
this committee, correct?
Yes.
And you said at least once, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's more than once, but at least once, that you felt that the decision-making for final determinations with respect to earth removal should rest with the ZBA.
Not necessarily. It depends. As I said, there's 3 levels potentially adjusted of where decisions are made. Special permits are with Zoning Board of Appeals.
Correct. And you wanted to expand that. You very specifically said in front of the Select Board that because the ZBA gets to require additional alternatives, that applications should then go to the ZBA. That was your statement, correct?
That is correct.
So what's your role then what do you suggest is the role of the planning board in that?
Well, the planning board, with all projects, recommends.
So-
And you have, as an elected board, you guys take a lot of effort working and scrutinizing developers and the proposal, and then it moves to zoning. One of the things I like about a special permit process is it requires 4 votes of the Zoning Board of Appeal. that puts more eyes and more thoughtful community members looking hard at things. So we receive your thoughtful recommendations, and you get a super majority in the Zoning Board of Appeals that also reviews to look at. I see it's another level of protection for the community to take a good hard look at things.
So you don't see that as possibly being something that the planning board, as elected officials who have to respond directly to the residents, that we should be doing?
No, you do it, but then you recommend to the Zoning Board of Appeals. We get it both ways. We get two levels. So I believe it should continue special permit thing, but of course, the definitions of what goes to special permit and what it goes to different levels of permitting is something that this committee will look at. As I say, we already have 3 levels.
Thank you, Mr. Peck.
You're welcome.
Next, we have Mr. Zuckerman.
Good evening.
Good evening, sir.
I submitted additional letter to Deborah Noonan, I hope.
We did receive it and have an
You got
opportunity
it?
to review it, yes.
Okay, I'm glad. Well, my name is Editor Zuckerman. I live in the Pine Hills. I have a master's degree from Harvard School of Design, class 1975. I worked in 6 states and many cities of this country, but for the past 12 years I lived and worked in Plymouth. I produced several conceptual projects, presented them to the Plymouth administration and community, including 10-Minute Village, plan for the former energy land, and Pilgrim Sands hotel and restaurant, and currently the triple-decker for affordable housing. I studied paragraph 203-2 and agree with most of its provisions, except the glaring omission that addressing the most controversial issue between the owners of the land, excuse me, and the community.
I'm sorry, sir. I'm sorry, sir. You cut out there. Could you just repeat? I'm afraid I apologize. I couldn't hear you. It's just the acoustics in the room can be pretty bad. Can you just repeat your last sentence, please? I want to make sure I heard you.
Okay.
You were describing the most glaring thing that you saw in the bylaw.
Right. And my position on this issue is conciliatory. I see that the regular construction of human habitat is also does also remove the soil, and also can send gravel and sand for profit. However, I oppose the removal of sand and gravel for the sole purpose of selling it, because it does not provide any construction of human habitat, but it only creates a destruction of a natural environment.
Thank you. I'll bring it to the board. Mr. Grandy.
Thank you, through the chair. I have no questions. The handout that you gave us earlier speaks volumes of where you stand as far as this committee is concerned. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grandy. Mr. Mand.
Thank you. Mr. Zuckerman, I'll ask you one of the questions I asked other people, if you could first express whether or not you have the time and energy to be able to participate in this, what is going to be a very rigorous meeting schedule probably, and how you would distill the present bylaw or the goal that you have for the present bylaw, and modification thereof.
Excuse me, can you repeat the question?
Sure. First, whether you have the time and energy for this effort, if you were selected to serve, it's going to be a strenuous and a big commitment. Whether you think you have that capability to do that now, and as well how you would distill down what you think needs to be done to change the bylaw effectively.
Well, I proposed at the end of my letter, as you can read it, to create a simple sentence which reads like this. The removal of the sand and gravel for the sole purpose of selling this sand and gravel is prohibited, and the administration should establish the fees, fines to violators of this proposal. This is an approximate sentence, of course, that needs to be worked out, but that reflects my attitude about this controversy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mant. Mr. Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Evening, Mr. Zuckerman. So, do you see any potential unintended consequences of overly restrictive regulations?
Yes, the consequences can be, I hope, that it can be that landowners who want to excavate the sand and gravel for the sole purpose of selling it would add some kind of a construction of residential, commercial, and agricultural purposes. For example, one of the provisions of the zoning bylaws requires that there would be 6 units per acre for the most of the residential districts. And I hope this owners would consider building, not only extracting the sand and gravel, but building something on top of it, or at least creating the solar fuels on top of it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Mr. Smith?
Mr. Zuckerman, you have this very specific sentence that you've proposed, and at the same time you're saying that you're interested in the ideas of other potential committee members. If you were to be on the committee, would you be willing to alter that position if the committee thought that was a better way to handle it?
Yes, well, I am willing to listen to any other ideas of potential members of this committee who have any other ideas how to solve this controversial problems. In my conversation with the community, I figure out that most of this community is, I spoke against the sand and gravel removal for the sole purpose of selling it. They even criticize the the current language of the paragraph 203-2. But I personally agree with most of it, and only I'd like to add something like this last sentence.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to discuss that, the addition to anybody, with anybody.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zuckerman.
Thank you.
Mr. Zuckerman, doesn't our current bylaw already prohibit the removal of sand and gravel solely for the purpose of the sale of sand and gravel?
It does not say, it does not address, it does not have a sentence of sand and removal for the sole purpose of selling it. It only has a very detailed language of for construction of residential, commercial, industrial, and agricultural.
Yes, but elsewhere in the bylaw, doesn't it expressly prohibit in the town of Plymouth sand mining, which is defined as the removal of sand and gravel solely for the purpose of sale? Don't we already prohibit that?
That does not.
You're not familiar with that provision of our bylaw? Okay, no, that's fine, thank you. So what do you think, in the end, would be the good result for a proposed revised bylaw? What would you like to see a proposed revised bylaw accomplish?
Accomplish the balance of building human habitat and creating the habitat for the growing population of Plymouth, which, as you know, is growing fast. So the construction is inevitable, necessary and inevitable, but the selling sand and gravel for this sole purpose of selling it is not necessary. It is not inevitable. It's only destructive.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Next this evening, we have Walter Morrison.
Good evening.
Good
Thank
evening.
you. First of all, addressing, and I think I should address, I was one of the people that had already participated in front of another board. It was the select board. I will admit to confusion in reading the initial instructions, and I did not understand from the instructions that I could apply to all three. That being said, maybe I misunderstood, but it wasn't eminently clear to me. Anyways, going on with the presentation here.
Well, again, Mr. Morrison, thank you for that, because you were not the only person who said that.
Okay.
So don't feel that you are alone in that confusion.
And in all honesty, if you'd asked me, why didn't you apply to the planning board? Well, I was appointed to the Conservation Commission by the Select Board most recently. And I felt as though I knew the most amount of people on that board. So I thought, well, that's probably my best choice. That was my logic. Didn't work out that way. Anyways, continuing. I'm different than everybody else that has applied to this position. I'm the only person that has applied or has been accepted and my background is agriculture. I know that sounds a little bit strange. It wasn't mentioned in your initial description of people that you were looking for, but I think it applies in this situation. Since agriculture is one of the uses of, and I will say sand, but more than sand, we're custodians of the ground, and that is part of what agriculture is. My background is from a while ago, I'll admit that, but it's University of Massachusetts. My degree was in agricultural economics. In current day nomenclature, that's now resource economics, since agriculture is kind of a less important, unfortunately, activity in this state, and that's just the way our state has matured. Cranberries is still an important industry in this state. I freely admit that I initially, in my start of business life, was selling agricultural inputs to all kinds of farmers, including cranberry growers. More recently, and I think it was in this, referring back to what I had sent in, I was appointed by the courts to federal furnace cranberry due to an inter-family dispute. Federal furnace cranberry was, and that's a past tense, was a large cranberry grower. They have sold all of their interests. At one point, they had 50 acres of cranberries on a 250-acre parcel on White Island Pond. That was sold off, and then most recently, back in 2022, the remaining almost 1,000-acre parcel with 250 acres of cranberries was sold off in Carver. That entity still exists, a federal furnace cranberry, and that's primarily, but without cranberry acreage. I still serve as a trustee with two of the lawyers, and the only reason why it is still open and not closed at this point, we have an ongoing obligation to farm managers, and it just hasn't wound up yet at this point. I have a knowledge of the cranberry industry and what is needed to grow a crop. My entire 25 years at Federal Furnace Cranberry, it's always been two lawyers and me. I was supposed to be, my job was to supervise the farm manager in the growing aspects of it. And that's kind of the background in that department. Of note to take out of this is that I do have knowledge of uses and what is necessary for the cranberry industry, and I hope I'm representing that. Also, I think one of the takeaways that I hope is taken from this is that I have the ability to, we'll call it referee different points of view, and I've proven that over a number of years. I have a science-based education. I've maintained, continued to educate. Even the year before I retired from my own business, I received certification from the state in invasive species management. More recently, my education has had to do with my, we'll call it second profession after retiring from business, and that's been, I was lucky enough to get appointed onto the Conservation Commission. And to be sure that I was up to snuff and doing a good job on that, I have attended in the classes necessary for the certification from MACC. I believe in education. You don't ever quit. You should continue. I felt there was things that I could learn, particularly since this was, even though my plant knowledge I felt was excellent, my geology knowledge I felt was excellent, but still for conservation more was required, and so that's why I kept up on that. So I do have a conservation background. One thing that has not been mentioned or has been asked, either by the select board or here tonight so far, is that I do have experience and have noticed, particularly in Carver, they've been collecting 25 cents a yard on all sand that has been taken out of that town. And the 25 cents a yard was not for sand if a cranberry bog owner took it out of his own reserve and using it on his own farm, but if it left the property, that individual's property, then that 25 cents a yard was due to the town. And as I understand it, we've only had it as a donation of 10 cents for decades. I don't know how long. And I feel that's one area that should be corrected. And my reasoning is the same reasoning that the town of Carver gave me. Hey, there's wear and tear in the streets, folks. Someone's got to pay for it, and it should be the people that did it. It's one area where it's different than nobody else has mentioned it. But I do believe in going that way.
Great, thank you. Mr. Mann. Oh, the microphone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening. Thanks for sticking in. One of the things that I think, question that comes up naturally as you give your background is there are many ways that people have argued that sand and gravel is abused in communities through developments where they allegedly need to take a certain amount and level a certain amount of ground and space, remove trees. But also, cranberry growers have been criticized for creating, I'll just say it straightforward, that in some people say it's a ruse sometimes when a cranberry grower takes an excessive amount of often upland to expand a bog, maybe make it more of a rectangle, more of a modern bog, and really is benefiting tremendously from the sand removed before any cranberries can be grown, and any sort of comparative value of those cranberries equals the sand taken out, the value of the sand. So would you comment on that and whether you think there's any element of fact to those assertions and whether you've seen any abuses like that?
Yes. One other part, in full confession, I probably should have gone into this also. My knowledge of cranberries is extensive enough that the Cape Cod Cranberry Growers Association, I volunteered, but I was paid minimally, to act as a tour guide for 2 years before they disbanded that. They used to run tours. And I was specifically asked to do it because of my agricultural background and the amount of tour groups that came out of the Midwest. And I could relate to the farmers in a way that none of the other tour guides could do it. Cape Cod Cranberry Growers stopped doing tours, and the person that used to do that for the Cape Cod Cranberry Growers Association moved over to Benson's Pond Cranberry in South Middleborough, and she called me a year ago and said, hey, would you also do it for us too, what you were doing before? And this last year I said, yes, I'll give you, pick the ag groups, but you only get 1 day a week during the season, that's it. Because I want to kind of be retired. And so I have continued doing that. In terms of, I think I should have addressed, I am no longer in the cranberry business as such, other than acting as a tour guide. My membership in Cape Cod Cranberry Growers Association, I'm no longer a member of that since I no longer am in the cranberry business as such. So that has passed me. Coming back to that, absolutely, positively, yes, that has been abused by, and I would prefer not to name names. I don't think that's right. And and not the place to do it, that's for sure, is to why do cranberry growers square off or make rectangles of bogs? Purely economics. They have to. What's happened within the industry? It is sunk. I attended a UMass, call it a UMass day over, for graduates of UMass over at the Cranberry Experiment Station earlier this summer. And it was reported to me then that the acreage in Massachusetts has dropped from 13,000 down to 11,200 in the last 4 years. Why? The cranberry growers are now producing too many berries. Why did that happen? Well, 25 years ago, Rutgers started doing more genetic crossbreeding, not GMO, but just regular Mendel crossing of varieties. And they produced new varieties that are much more productive. New acreage came in Quebec, more acreage came in Wisconsin. Massachusetts used to be #1 producer, we're now back to #3. We have older bogs. It's a native plant to this area. Our bogs were constructed a long time ago, irregular shapes, and for a good reason. If you're doing it with a shovel and a wheelbarrow, you're not going to create a nice, neat rectangle. You're going to follow the topography of the land. Have things changed within the industry so that it can be more ecologically compatible? And the answer is yes. I've participated going back, I think it's 15 years ago, 16 years ago, with a joint effort between AD Makepeace, Federal Furnace Cranberry, and the Town of Plymouth in straightening out White Island Pond. Were the cranberry growers partially responsible for what happened at White Island Pond? And I answered yes. I knew it. I've been selling in the industry. I knew what they were applying per acre. Studies were done. Many management decisions that a grower could make were improved by the 2-year-long studies that were done, and eventually a cleanup was done of the pond. Your original question was, do I recognize that cranberries are part of the problem, or could be? And the answer is yes, some have. I have seen instances where one grower who extracted sand, put in cranberries, and then a few years later came back after putting in bog and put solar over it because state laws encouraged it. So I have seen the downsides.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mann. Mr. Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What do you believe that the primary purpose of the earth removal regulations should be? Is it restriction? Is it guidance? Is it balanced oversight? And why? And how would that purpose influence the way you draft the rules?
Several of those purposes should be taken into account. Oversight, absolutely. Planning ahead of time, absolutely. Somehow there has to be a mechanism within whatever's set up to more adequately plan and not be able to get around what our purpose is in doing this. The protection of the environment in our water source here has to happen. At the same time, balancing out the other way, I will freely admit, am I going to try to be protective of a cranberry grower who needs sand? Are there some cranberry growers that are out there that do not have their own sand and have to buy from other entities that create sand? Yes. If they don't have the sand, they will have to stop. That I can guarantee. It's an ongoing practice of growing cranberries where every 5 years, I've got to deliver a half-inch of sand over that bog. And that practice was discovered by accident way back after the revolution in Cape Cod.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Mr. Grandy.
Through the chair, I have no questions. Thank you for coming in this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Grandy.
Thank you.
So, Mr. Morrison, as part of your experience in working in the industry, do you have knowledge or working knowledge of how the state regulations apply to sand and cranberries and agricultural uses in general?
I have knowledge to know that in the state regulations, agriculture is kind of given a pass. And it's given a pass in a lot of different kinds of agriculture. The state recognizes that they don't want to ban agriculture. As a person who's interested in conserving the environment, because I live in Plymouth, I live at 9 Bloody Pond Road, didn't say that earlier. A cranberry bog owner, on average in this state, for every acre of bog, he has another 3 acres of upland. Well, that means a 25-acre cranberry grower, that is a 100-acre parcel. That's a 100-acre parcel that doesn't have another house on it. So yes, I am familiar.
Do you believe that that familiarity and your experience in the industry will help you in working with a committee to draft a bylaw that might, for lack of a better term, close some of the unexpected loopholes that are being exploited by those who are abusive of their rights under state law?
I hope so. And I hope at the same time them also speak up enough to say, hey, wait a minute, what are the unintended consequences, and I hope I see the unintended consequences of being too strict and then essentially killing somebody that we didn't mean to, an industry that we didn't mean to knock off.
Thank you very much for your time this
Thank
evening.
you. Thank you.
And last this evening, we have Mr. Cirque.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I've lived in Plymouth since 1974, during which time I practiced real estate and zoning law in a Plymouth law firm until I retired 45 years later in 2019. I was a member of the zoning board from 1979 through 1986, retiring as its chair. I'm a longtime town meeting member. I was a member of the committee that formulated the current earth removal provisions of the zoning bylaw, which was approved in 2018 by town meeting. And as you've heard tonight, earth removal provisions were divided into 3 categories: those not requiring a zoning permit, those requiring a zoning permit but not a special permit, and those requiring both. The key provision was defining earth removal that was quote-unquote necessary and incidental to a lawful principal use or a lawful structure or an approved subdivision road or a lawful utility installation. Earth removal operations that were not deemed to be quote-unquote necessary and incidental were regulated more tightly than those that were. The committee set forth criteria to define necessary and incidental, but experience over subsequent years has shown that these criteria were not scientifically specific enough to prevent undesirable earth removal operations. What's needed now, in my opinion, is a professional consultant's advice to supply specific scientific criteria by which to define and distinguish earth removal operations. The committee's job would include sifting from among those operations and formulating the degree of regulation that would be required for each. Among the ideas that I think the committee needs to consider are, first of all, as has been stated, researching the bylaws of other towns. They're available through the Attorney General's office. And picking out provisions that would be helpful to include in ours. In terms of enforcement, as I've said, I think adopting scientific criteria would be helpful to avoid the generality of incidental and necessary, even though the existing bylaw does attempt to define those terms. I think in terms of enforcement, in lieu of a cash bond up front, which the bylaw requires, it might be better, since we can't predict the future with any degree of certainty, to require a percentage of the income generated by earth removal based on a cubic yard, to require a certain percentage of that income to be put in escrow to make sure that the site is indeed, as required, restored at the end of the project. So that as the money comes into the grower, there's an automatic bypass for a certain amount of money that's coming into the grower to make sure that the site is properly reclaimed. Sort of like a security deposit. And finally, I think it's worth considering whether this board, which is elected, rather than the zoning board, which is appointed, ought to be the special permit granting authority. The zoning board generally adjudicates disputes or issues that are more local in nature between adjoining property owners. That's not, I don't mean to say that's always the case, but that's their particular expertise. Here we're talking about a bylaw that would apply to the town in general. And I think an elected board would be a better way of doing it. Anyway, it's worth considering. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Mr. Cirque. Mr. Mann.
Thank you. I guess one of the obvious questions to ask you, since you were, and you addressed it in part, is as a member of the past board that is committee that created our existing sand and gravel earth removal bylaw, besides the thing you stated, what else do you think, if anything, went wrong? Why has it not been an effective bylaw? And you may disagree with that. You can make that point as well.
Yeah. I think the conditions that are set forth in the bylaw can be made more specific in terms of the requirement that traffic counts be monitored and professionally submitted, but that's in the existing bylaw, but it perhaps could be made tightened. We've talked about alternatives analysis, that's in the existing bylaw. It's a matter of municipal oversight, but of course municipal oversight only comes after the bylaw is written. Municipal oversight has to be generated by the bylaw itself. So the task is coming up with conditions that can be comfortably enforced by the town, knowing that the town has limited personnel, as you know. I'm not sure I answered your question.
No, I put you on the spot and you did a good job.
Pardon me?
I said I put you on the spot and you did a good job.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Bennett.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Evening, Mr. Serkey.
Good evening.
Do you see any potential unintended consequences of overly restrictive regulations?
I do, because over-restrictive regulations, I think, would choke off activity that should not be choked off. I mean, for example, as you've heard, agriculture is a activity which has preferential treatment under Chapter 40A, Section 3. And we can't choke that off under the guise of over-regulation of earth removal, especially since earth removal is necessary for the cultivation of cranberry bogs. Also, the removal of sand and gravel from a site ought to be the condition precedent to the construction of commercial buildings and commercial uses. So if you're gonna restrict the removal of gravel from a site to an overly strict extent, you might be limiting unduly the future use of the property for commercial and industrial purposes, which is absolutely necessary for our tax base. So, as with everything, it's a balancing act. And as long as the person removing the sand and gravel doesn't forget about the end use that he proclaimed when he got permission to remove the sand and gravel, I think you're making progress.
Thank you. I appreciate your answer.
Yeah.
I asked the question because I don't know the answer myself. So, and I appreciate your answer very much. The only other question I had was when drafting earth removal regulations, how would you balance the environmental protection with the potential economic benefit of the gravel removal?
That's the same question I think I just answered. I think we need some scientific criteria so that we're not shooting from our hip, but we're basing it actually on data, on science. We don't have enough of that in the existing bylaw, but I want to say, as a person who was on the committee that drafted the existing bylaw, I'm proud of our work. I'm not running away from it. It needs to be tighter. And I wouldn't be here if I thought that it was satisfactory and didn't need to be changed.
Very good, thank you. And I would just at this time, as we're getting toward the end of this is one of the things that I would like to bring up, get on record for all of the potential applicants here, is that one of the things I see missing from this is air monitoring, which I know has been an issue with some of the gravel removal projects in the area. And I know that other large-scale earth-moving projects such as landfills require...
Can you speak up a little bit, Mr. Newman?
Sorry. Consider air monitoring as being part of the regulation.
Consider what? Air monitoring.
Air quality monitoring.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
Thank you. I'll leave it there.
and require people with expertise in those areas to give the special permit granting authority, whoever that is, a professional report. Just like you wouldn't endorse an A&R plan or a Form C plan without a registered surveyor's stamp on it. Make sure that you've got a registered professional giving you his or her opinion about what this permit, if granted, ought to contain.
Thank you. Mr. Smith?
I don't have a question for you, but I do want to commend you on your thoughtful analysis of the existing bylaw, as well as your interest in coming back to look at it again. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Grandy?
Thank you. Mr. Cirque, how are you this evening? Good? How are you this evening?
I'm fine.
Okay.
I'm fine. I'm a little, my ears are not as good as they were 20 years ago, but I hear you.
Mine aren't that good anymore either, right? Some things you don't want to listen to, right? When you were on the bylaw review, this gravel removal committee previously in 2018 or 2017, the language previous to what we approved in 2018 was quite minimal as far as restrictions and removal was concerned, yes or no?
The language prior to what was in 2018?
Correct.
I think it was pretty bare bones.
Right. So you made some great improvements.
Yeah.
And at this point in time, we have to tighten up
Yeah,
the existing bylaw.
yeah,
And you've made the suggestion as far as professionals, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
As far as trips leaving a particular site, you can mandate that in the decisions, whoever the permitting authority it is.
Yeah.
As far as truck slips, how many trucks leave, what time they left, the whole
That's
nine
all in the
yards.
bylaw.
Within the decision as far as through the zoning board or the planning
Yeah.
board, again, whoever the granting authority is, that language would need to be in place within that decision. So we would hope when this committee reviews, if you serve on this committee,
yeah.
to put some type of enforcement language in there to include that at the cost of, obviously, the owner of the property removing the material on site. Because I remember at town meeting having a vote as far as cost per yard, and we talk about the benefits to the town.
You gotta be
We
very
had one
careful
night
with-
at town meeting, if you remember correctly, I think it went on for an hour and a half, if you remember it.
I do.
You were around at that time.
You got to be very careful with that because if it,
These people that, the agriculturists, it's their land, they have a right to farm, and they have some
Yeah.
protections in place through state laws, which I'm sure you reviewed in the 2018 version of the Gravel Review Committee,
Yeah.
and probably brought some professionals in at the time
yeah,
to go over the laws that are required and the protections that an agricultural use has as far as the removal of material is concerned. The other thing, landowners have a right to utilize their property within the current zoning that is in place. So for me, this committee really needs to batten down the hatches and look at ways to make it better for, not only for the aquifer air, the community, the woods, everything. But we have to balance that. It's a balancing act, as you stated, and a couple of the other members also discussed.
you have to also-
Because, let me speak, please.
Yeah.
You need to be able to balance both so that we look into the future and the water that we have and use is protected.
yeah.
That's the important thing to me, right? Yes, we've had cranberry growers, maybe, I'm not going to name names, that overutilize their abilities with the laws that are in place as far as the gravel removal is concerned.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things and issues, as you well know, from 2018 that are going to come into play. And I appreciate you coming back in as far as looking at the one that you actually helped create. So I think that's an important aspect.
Thank you. With respect to the per yard contribution or fee, You got to be very careful with that, because if it looks and walks and quacks like an extraction, a mandatory extraction, it may not be legal.
Yeah, I remember having discussions with the planning board and the zoning board has in the past as far as
Yeah.
cash bonds and the protection of the roads that they're driving on with the vehicles. That discussion always comes up
Yeah.
in every single gravel removal proposal, whether before the zoning board or the planning board.
Yeah.
So those discussions do come up, but we need the tight language to be able to enforce
That's right.
what the residents of the community and town meeting eventually, when they approve this new bylaw after it's written and reviewed by quite a few boards, including advisory and finance. Everybody in the room knows the processes we'll go through at town meeting. So again, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Is that it?
You have answered the questions that I've had, so again, thank you very much for coming out
Thank
this
you.
evening. So at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go candidate by candidate in the order in which they appeared before us this evening. I'm going to call only for yes votes. Every board member may vote yes 3 times. And we will total those candidates who receive a majority of the board will be appointed. If we end up with less than total number, we can do one more revote, after which I will declare that we do not have an agreement on a candidate, and if we don't have 3 candidates, then we will re-advertise the position. So, first, Mr. Hemberger. By show of hands, all in favor? Okay, I have Mr. Bennett, Mr. Grandy, myself, and Mr. Smith. By show of hands, Mr. Peck? I have Mr. Mand. By show of hands, Mr. Zuckerman? I see no hands. By show of hands, Mr. Morrison? I see all unanimous. And Mr. Cirque? I see 4 hands, all other than Mr. Mand. So that is 4 votes for Mr. Hemberger, 5 votes for Mr. Morrison, 4 votes for Mr. Cirque, 1 vote for Mr. Peck, no votes for Mr. Zuckerman. So, Mr. Hemberger, Mr. Morrison, Mr. Cirque, congratulations, you've been appointed by this committee. Please make sure to go and get sworn in. That is a requirement before you appear to do any work on behalf of the committee. To all of the candidates and to everyone who come out, thank you very much. We appreciate your time, your effort, your consideration, and your willingness to serve the town. Thank you very much. Thank you all. Next on our agenda, we have a discussion of 150 Bump Rock Road, potential lot division.
Hi.
Good evening, Mr. D'Ambrosio.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Are you guys ready for me? Okay, for the record, Rob D'Ambrosio, attorney, D'Ambrosio Law here in Plymouth. We got to hear about the Rye Tavern today. I've got the proprietor here with me, who's my client, Ellis Withington, and we've got Kyle Hanrahan, our civil engineer at Merrill Land Surveyors and Engineering, with us as well tonight. So we're here just seeking informal feedback, if you will, on what we'd like to present in a more full-blown format as an A&R plan. And this is on Bump Rock Road, so some of you probably are familiar with the, recent activity on Bump Rock Road. Of course, for an A&R endorsement, I've been before you guys recently on another one, although the planning board's capacity is ministerial in nature by statute. There's always the capacity for some wrinkles, so just wanted to, for lack of a better word, kick the tires and just see if there were any items of concern relative to this project. In my view, I think Bump Rock Road has been determined with some level of certainty to be an adequate way in terms of frontage for A&R purposes. There's been lot division via the A&R process on Bump Rock Road recently and repeatedly over the last 10 years or so. In fact, there's a house being constructed directly across the street from our locus at the moment, and I think the roadway is about 22 feet in width here. So again, here's the plan. We've got a approximately 31-acre existing lot with a single-family residence on it. It is Mr. Withington's home. And he proposes to create 3 lots, as you can see here. We've got a 5.3-acre lot, a nearly 11-acre lot, and about a 7.4-acre lot, all with at least 200 feet of frontage on Bump Rock Road. So again, I don't want to belabor this, but that's kind of what we're here for, is just to see if there's any concerns or feedback at this stage before we move toward real engineering time and energy. And I don't know if staff has any comments, but that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll bring it to staff.
So I'm just going to go through some of the history here, kind of starting back. So 1986, this was a subdivision that was approved by the planning board. It's 169 acres, and they came in and had a request to do 9 lots on 169 acres, which is a density about 1 unit per 18 acres. And in return, the board waived all the standards for road construction and said you can have 9 lots on this large piece of land provided and using a 16-foot wide gravel road. In addition, when that was approved, there was a covenant that was put on record, and I'll just note a couple pieces of the covenant. It said, shall never be subdivided into more than there were 2 different sets of lots. One was 3 lots, and then the other ones were no more than 2. So it should say in both cases, shall never be divided into more than 2 lots or 3 lots on the one, each which shall be used only for single-family residential purposes and uses accessory thereto. And then the second part of the covenant says that covenantors and successors do hereby waive their right to further subdivide the proposed the lots pursuant to the provisions of Chapter 41, except as provided in the paragraph. And so as we look at this, we had 9 lots. This is the subject lot, and when it was originally approved, with a maximum of 2 houses on it. There was 2 other properties that had a maximum of 2 lots on it, and then a third parcel that was allowed to have a maximum of 3 lots. So a total of 9 lots total to be created. The lot that had 3 lots on it is the one that had come before the board previously. So T&K Realty came in and first came in with a A&R plan that showed that they wanted to subdivide 2 of these lots further. So the 2 lots became 5 lots. And so there were 3 lots total. 1 lot was built on. They had 2. They said, we'd like to take these 2 and further subdivide it into 5. So instead of 3 lots total from the original subdivision, it went to 6. And the planning board approved the A&R plan, which did 2 things. It created the lot, and then it determined that Bump Rock Road was a suitable, as Attorney D'Ambroso pointed out, of width and grade construction for a subdivision for A&R purposes. So that plan was signed, there was legal action, and ultimately they came back and said, in addition to the A&R plan, you have to go back to the planning board and modify the covenant and the subdivision. So that came back before the planning board, and the planning board in 2021 voted to modify the subdivision to allow for that additional density to go from 3 units to 6 units total from the original subdivision. And so that was approved. Since then, nothing's been built on those lots. The road has been improved, although that wasn't a requirement of the planning board, but the road has been further improved beyond the 16-foot. And so what's proposed here is they're looking at a lot that they have that said that you could not create more than 2 buildings on it. And just point out that one lot has been built on, and then some of this land was part of land that was traded off to the Pine Hills and included in the Pine Hills. And they're looking to now take that other remaining parcel and subdivide it into 3 lots. So to me, this is a question, a tough question for the Board of Equity. You have one abutter or one property owner here where the board, a previous board, Tim Grandy, I think is the only one who sat at that time, who said that that was acceptable, and now we have a second property owner who's asking for the same modification. I will point out, and I'm not sure what the implications are, although the planning board voted to modify and allow for the 6 lots, that covenant is still on record, and to the best of my knowledge, nobody's ever come back to say or explained whether or not they feel that covenant needs to be amended or how that covenant affects the future buildability of the lots previously created by the board. So I still wonder about that covenant and whether there has to be additional action by this board to release or modify that covenant, or whether or not just a simple vote of the board that they took in 2021 allows them to move forward with those 3 additional lots on that one property. So again, I think it's really a question of equity. One property owner was allowed to do this. How do we feel, we, when I say we, I mean you, about doing this again for the second property owner? And then I would point out that in addition to the one that was already done, the ones before you, there are 2 more parcels out there where this could come back again for 2 more individual properties. And I think that's all I have for now.
Is the parcel that was swapped with the Pine Hills or whatever the exchange process was, is that subject to this covenant?
It's also part of now the Osmud, and it's listed as non-buildable. So I'm not concerned about that. I think it's really just this one piece that said you could have one house on this piece, and now they want to go instead of 1 to 3. The other pieces, I think, they will not come back because they're part of the Osmud development now.
No, but I meant the part that, so as I understand, the Pine Hills had a portion of this land. The owner of this property had land. They exchanged those parcels, correct?
So yeah, so I will say, so as part of that, the Osmud was added 1 additional unit in the Osmud.
Right. So the
One
Osmond,
house now, so you could probably argue that this would go again, similar to the last one, instead of 2, a total of 5. 1 that's there now, 1 that went to the Osmud, and 3 additional, or 2 additional.
but the property that the Pine Hills gave to this owner, is that subject to, this covenant talks about certain properties. So I want to know if that parcel is subject to that covenant or not.
The piece that the Pine Hills gave to these people? No.
Correct.
No.
Well, so, may I, if I may?
Please,
we
we really do want to understand what it is.
Help, I can,
So just first, so the covenant from 86 has never been amended. So that covenant, unless this property was part of that? It was. Okay, so.
Okay, so it
So there
was
was-
part of this covenant. That's fine. That was my question, was to make sure that all of the parcels that we're talking about are subject to this covenant.
yes. Yes,
Okay.
so just for clarity's sake, I think a picture is worth 1,000 words. This is the original 1986 subdivision plan that created the 4 lots out of that 169 acres. And this lot here is one of the original 4 lots that my client, Mr. Withington, owned. From this power line easement I don't know if that's east, but along the highway here, I don't think it is east. Yes, south. This section here is what Pine Hills took. So what we're left with is this piece, which again, just going back, it's different orientation, but you can see it's kind of this piece, so it's lost the leg that was down here, just so you're clear. So that strip hugging the expressway is what the Pine Hills now owns. But that's non-developable, and the remainder, which is the 30-acre lot that we're seeking to divide, is subject to the covenant and has one house on it. We're trying to have 3 total lots.
So you're seeking to divide it 2 more.
Correct. 1 lot would become 3 lots, yes. And as Lee pointed out, you know, again, the reason, and I've been in the unenviable position of having these plain vanilla A&Rs lately, you know, kind of, you know, this one, that covenant's out there. Again, I like to think that it's been adjudicated, you know, in a manner of speaking, through the courts and the planning board's earlier decision, you know, and it's kind of settled at this point. But again, that's kind of why we're here, to, you know, make sure that you're aware of it, let you ruminate on it to the extent it's even relevant, and take your temperature before we kind of pick a firm path forward.
And the other thing to consider, and be interesting to hear your feedback, is whether or not for those other 2, we don't know if they would ever come back or not. If you want to just, if there was a room to make a decision whether we do it for all of these across the board or just for this one now as the second one that comes in, and deal with the other ones should they come back.
Okay, well, let me see if fellow members of the board have any comments or questions before I go forward with that. So I'll start with Mr. Bennett.
I don't have any questions yet, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Smith.
For clarification, the parcel we're looking at now, the covenant has that, this has already been subdivided, this is already the second one on that?
I guess
So the
that's...
covenant would say that it couldn't be divided further. Is that
2
correct?
houses exist, right? So you have one piece that was deeded out with a house, and then this one. So there were 2 houses from the original. So yeah, so the original covenant said 2. So this is one that has
One
one
of the
house.
2.
And then just to the south of here was the other piece that had the second house.
Okay. So
This
to
piece here.
conform with the covenant, this would not be allowed.
Correct. That's why we're bringing it to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any
Mr.
questions?
Correct. The only thing I would say is the second house on the 74 acres that I started with was built as part of the Osmond. So I don't know if that, you know, quashes the second house that was permitted with a covenant or not. Also, I've got almost 31 acres. I'm looking for 3 lots, and the one you approved was about 25 acres, and it's got 6 lots. So I'm a lot less dense than the one that you approved previously.
Thank you. Mr. Mand.
I guess what I'm concerned with, and maybe it's inevitable, but where does this end? I mean, the initial covenant was to permanently restrict, and that's why people were given these homes and properties, and that's what their expectation was. And it's a rare area in the community. It really is one of the last areas in town with this authentic, rustic dirt roads and settings. And there was a big battle over the last one, the last change. And it was a technicality, essentially, that it hinged on, as I understand it. I would call it a technicality in that the original covenant had never been put in, essentially put in by the board? Was it a covenant that they themselves, the property owners, created, so therefore it expired?
No.
What
They
was,
never-
so explain what that was?
So the covenant is a condition of the planning board's vote, and town council has ruled that unlike other covenants that are just personal ones, this was the planning board's a party to. So it does not and would never expire. What was there was in 1986, and this is the first time the planning board ever tried to do something like this with no further subdivision and lower density. There was a expectation to put conservation restrictions on this property. That never happened.
Oh, that never
So there's a
happened.
covenant that says no further subdivision, but CRs, conservation restrictions, were never put on it. And as you look at this, some of it's agriculture, some of it's single-family homes. I'm not even sure how you could have done that. I think at the time, the planning board said, let's do this and put a CR on without really understanding the complications of what it would actually take to do that, but the covenant is in place.
So, one of the questions I also have is the homes that were part of this original covenant, and this original division of property and certain amount of restriction on how many lots could be created, how many of those are still in the original owners?
Well,
The original owners?
I mean the people that were,
well, and there were no homes, this was
No, but.
undeveloped
like
land in
the first
86.
people-
No, Mr. Mayor said how many homes, so I just want to be clear, yeah.
No. The original owners do not own any of the property. Oh. The original owners do not own any of the property anymore.
but the people that acquired this property all were buying property that they knew had this specific covenant at the time.
Yes.
Let me make a remark, actually. So, again, I think it's quite relevant, and again, I was hoping not to get too much into it, but here we are. So, that litigation in land court in 2017, 2018, Mr. Withington actually opposed the development initially because he said, look, just like you said, we all kind of had an expectation that we wouldn't have more density here, but, now that the character of this area has been changed, and as he pointed out, we had a 25-acre parcel divided into 5 lots. Well, the kind of, in his view, I think, I don't want to speak for you, Ellis, but the ship has kind of sailed in terms of abiding by that covenant and preserving sort of what might have been envisioned 40 years ago. So, again, that's when Lee alluded to equity. I think that's kind of the approach that we're taking here as well. Look, maybe this isn't the way that Ellis would have liked it. I can tell you it really wasn't, but, now that things have changed, it's really not fair for him to be, subject to something that his neighbor wasn't subject to. It's unreasonable, and we would just hope the board would be consistent for that reason. So again, if I'm mischaracterizing Ellis, you could speak up. But.
Thank you.
And I would point out, too, that original development, 1 unit per 18 acres, that's an incredibly low density.
Mr. Grandy.
Okay, so I want to go to that, you said T&K Realty, right? Was the last time that we voted to actually allow more density in this area. The road was widened and met the requirements of the fire department, correct?
Yes.
All right, so in this section, in this area, is the road widened?
It's actually much wider than it was in 2016 when you guys, I think it was 12 feet wide at that time. Now it's like 22
Wow.
feet.
All I'm saying is you're coming initially to see if we have any issues whatsoever with doing this, correct? Now, the land that was given back by the Pine Hills, wasn't it originally sold to the Pine Hills?
But again, I would consider that a wash.
I know that, but it was sold and then given back. Yes?
Partially.
Partially.
So I sold 40 acres to the Pine Hills, and they sold 20 of it to my uncle. With only 1 acre that could be developed. And the rest has all been preserved or conserved or whatever. No, it can't be built on.
All right. So I don't have all the documents here this evening as far as that decision that was made by, obviously I signed it. So I have some in my computer at home, that gives me the total history of the property and the whole, everything that's happened to it over the years. So to me, as long as you meet the requirements of the fire department, safety, water, power, to me, if you're gonna split this from one lot to 3, I don't have an issue doing that as long as you meet all the requirements through the processes. So that is my opinion as far as is concerned. What about speaking, make sure you speak to all the abutters and the neighbors that you have in the area, if you have any, with the size of the property to ensure that we won't have any issues when you come back with a definitive type of plan, right?
So 2 things. First, the vote from 2021 is in your packets on page 7.
I'm talking about the stuff I have from T&K Realty with all the legal and the decisions from land court and everything else that went along with it.
So
right?
whatever you give for guidance tonight will require a modification of the subdivision.
Yeah.
So I believe you agree with that?
I don't, not necessarily. I think that's the course that T&K took in 2021, but again, I'm, you know, I guess I'm not sure that if T&K had applied for a building permit, which they still haven't, that it wouldn't have issued. I think that's an inspectional services call, so.
They applied for more houses, more density in the area, which was approved. Now, it's not up to us to pull the permit for them. I mean, eventually, they will pull, I think, will pull a permit.
Yeah, so again, and maybe it's a question to go to town council, but my opinion is it's a vote of the board and a covenant. Well, even if we don't need to amend the covenant, I think you need to amend the vote because the vote clearly says only 2 houses here. So, and again, maybe it's a question.
Yeah, the original vote
for
back in
council.
when? What year? What year was the original subdivision approved?
1986.
1986, right. So that decision was how many houses?
2.
2. And then it was, ended up being 3 and 4.
No,
Yeah,
no.
before TK Realty. It was
So
subdivided.
they
It
were-
was subdivided a number of times. Am I not mistaken?
No, they were approved for 2. They were, wait a minute.
TK was 3,
Yep.
and there's now 6.
Yeah, so TK
Right.
was, yeah.
So it started with 2, and then it ended up 3. and
Started
then
with
3
no,
were
no,
added
no,
for
no,
6.
No, started with 3 and ended up with 6.
Is that correct? Started with 3?
Yes.
Yes.
7, no, not 7.
And none of the other properties were further subdivided. That's the only one that was further subdivided from the original 86
Right,
vote.
so for all intents and purposes, how old was the covenant again? 50-something years?
86, so 40 years or close 38 years.
Right, so for all intents and purposes, do we need the covenant? If we're gonna start splitting this again to 2 more lots?
Well, again, you could vote to eliminate the covenant. You could modify the covenant just to limit the number of units, because this is 3-acre zoning, so the density even could be higher. It's up to the board.
It's just throwing it out there
And again,
in the
maybe...
discussion.
maybe
Amend
the-
that covenant to match what we have there today and put the rest of it into conservation and actually record it
Yeah,
this time.
I don't think you'll be able to do a conservation restriction. I think it would be just a standard open space restriction, just like we
Well,
have
okay.
in some of our other developments.
Yeah, right. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Grandy. So, my reading of the land court decision and the other decisions was that it was not a definitive finding that the covenant is no longer enforceable. It did not eliminate the covenant. It merely was permissive. It said that the planning board may, which means that the planning board also may decline to do it again. I certainly appreciate Mr. Withington's desires, given that somebody else got to do this. But at the same time, the residents of that area were quite opposed to that happening, yourself included. And covenants are put in for a reason. People are agreeing to something for a reason, and people rely on them. So I am personally very, very hesitant to override a covenant whose purpose has not been eliminated. The purpose was to keep this as limited for development. Now, circumstances change, people's sentiments change, and if the neighborhood wishes to change, wants to recognize that there's greater value to their land and potential future development, then that's something we certainly need to look at and consider. But it needs to be the consideration of everybody who lives in the area. No, I'm not going to require a unanimity of every resident to say, yes, no, that'll never happen on any subject. But at the same time, I think that whereas being allowed to override the covenant once is one thing, doing it a second time essentially starts to sound like we're just ignoring it, and it might as well go away, as Mr. Grandy said. If we're not going to abide by it, then let's get rid of it and let everybody do it. That will significantly change the character of the area, or certainly has the potential to do so. So there are consequences to our decision above and beyond, and first and foremost, I want to understand legally what we need to do. So I will ask staff to refer this to town council to give us some guidance with respect to the current status of the previously divided lots and what needs to be done with respect to any change that we make, whether that requires a change to the subdivision, and additionally, what other restrictions we can put on to further protect if we do decide to do something, so as to not turn around and have the next person turn around and say, well, I'd like to put 20 houses on. And I have the lots, or 10 houses, whatever the number may be. And ultimately, it's not just who's living there now, but it's who takes over in the future. And that's what we have to look at. It's the unintended consequence, because if someone can make money off of it, they will come in and find a way to do so, and that will potentially change the character, and character was what this was designed to protect. So I can say that from my own personal standpoint, and it's just my personal standpoint, I will look with great scrutiny at any suggestion that a covenant not be enforced.
Yeah. If I may, I would offer that, times change. I think those were your words, that they do. I think that's one of the reasons why covenants lapse on their face after 30 years. And again, that's maybe another question for town council as to what their position might be on that.
Yeah, if I could, I'm very confident on that one. It's a condition of the vote. So if it's a condition of a special permit or a subdivision, it doesn't expire without the board modifying that. And we've had that interpretation, but we can double check again. But
And that's fine, along with the fact that, again, we can talk about what would have occurred if this had been a different type of covenant, and would it have lapsed? And under those circumstances, do we then impose a stricter requirement, or do we go back to what would normally have been the case? Again, this was an unusual covenant in the way that it was done. It was certainly, again, the classic circumstance, unintended consequences of people doing things not knowing exactly what is going to happen as a result.
Yeah.
And I don't think we want to fall down that same path again. So whatever we're going to do, we need to know exactly what the potential consequences are and make sure that everybody understands those. And that we do, again, what works. It's a balancing test, obviously. It's going to be a balancing test between property owners' rights and the neighbors, and I'd say the neighborhood rights. This is probably less one in which the entirety of the town has an issue, other than the fact that, as Mr. Mann did correctly say, this is an area of unique cultural concern for the town. You are in an area that is, frankly, one that the town cherishes, and understandably so. Yeah. And so we certainly would like to, from a community standpoint, preserve that same character without being overly restrictive. So we need to look.
Yeah, and just very briefly, again, that's, if this board, or town council or whomever comes down and says, look, you can't divide your lot for whatever reason, then Mr. Withings really got it coming and going, right? He lost the character of his neighborhood, has 5 lots next door to him that he didn't want, that exists, and now he can't do it. So it really, again, I hear and appreciate everything that you're saying and from your perspective, but I mean, that's really, now he's gotten the worst of all worlds. It's really a catastrophe for someone who's owned this property for almost 30 years. But that's just, you know, again, that's an equitable position I would just...
It's certainly a valid one, but, you know, my mother used to tell me, 2 wrongs don't make a right. So there's... No, not that the first decision was wrong, merely created a different set of circumstances. So again, we've got a lot that we'll look at. So understand that this is going to be, this is not going to be a simple process.
Yeah, and maybe, given what we've heard, it might make sense to tackle the covenant issue before we tackle the A&R. I mean, I'm just kind of thinking out loud, because really, it sounds like they're inextricably linked. At least that seems to be Lee's view. I think you're going down that road, and if town council agrees, you know, probably makes sense to maybe tackle the covenant first before we go drawing lot lines that mean nothing or
That probably does make sense.
So if I could, so I think we have a good gauge from you and Tim where you sit, but if Tim and Frank can kind of chime in to give us a little guidance, that would be helpful too. And Chris, because it could be, well, it won't be a special permit, but if we could, if you're willing.
I think, again, in fairness to them, they want to look at this a little bit more, and I don't want to put anyone on the spot with respect to that. Some of us have studied this a little bit more. I followed it with great interest just as a resident down the road and as an attorney who was very curious in the legal aspects of the decision. Not everybody has that same maniacal bent as I do to actually read case law for no apparent reason. So, Mr. Smith.
It would be very helpful to me to see this map and perhaps, you know, what's the current situation and what was the original situation for this development? You know, because if we're talking about issues that may apply elsewhere within the development, it'd be good to see, you know,
like,
what's occurred.
like overlay the original lot lines from 86 with the current lot lines, something like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Without so many meets and
Yeah,
bounds.
there's a lot going on in this plan, yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
So I think, well, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Mr. Bennett.
So actually, pretty much the same point Chris was trying to make, that I'd like to see a plan, map, with a highlight showing what was covered under the original covenant.
Yeah.
Here it is, shaded in yellow. Now, what happened with what was excluded from the covenant? At what point shade that in, let's call it red, or something illustrative of what's, because that plan is barely readable, honestly.
Yeah.
Certainly not from this distance. And I think that just some figures, some illustrations of what you're talking about for those of us who don't delve into the intricacies of the legalese and are more visual learners, if you will. I think that would be helpful for us to understand what's going on here, what has happened, and what are you asking for?
Sure, yep, absolutely, yeah, we're really dipping a toe in the water tonight, and we'll give you more.
But given that, I think I'm more inclined to agree with Mr. Grandy that it's your land, you have the frontage, you have a minimal amount of density there, and other than the whole kerfuffle with the covenant, I wouldn't have a problem with it.
I have an illustration that I think addresses your concern about the...
Yeah.
Well, why don't you,
Maybe we'll show it next
you
time.
need to provide that to the planning department and
So the two things I'm looking at here is, one is the one comment, and tell me if I'm wrong, where if we hear from how the other property owners within this subdivision feel about further subdivision, I think you've said that would be helpful. So if we-
One of whom was a litigant, again, I mean,
yeah.
it's gonna be a tough,
Well,
that's a tough
I
ask.
think we can assume whether they like it or not, that they're okay with it because they did it. I think we're talking about the other property
Yeah.
owners beyond TK. And then
Yeah.
the second one is a review with council about the process to amend the validity of the covenant as it stands today.
I think that's kind of what I was trying to get at too, with coloring it, is who else is still burdened by this covenant?
Yep.
And are they on board, you know, of
Yeah.
the letter of support,
Yeah.
if that were
Yeah,
possible?
and again, we'll give it to you chapter and verse, but just real quick, you know, original lot here, which is Ellis, Pine Hills took this piece, which is not developed, you know, TK's lot is this one, and then I think these two haven't been broken up yet, but we'll do it better, we'll illustrate it for you.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anything further? Seeing nothing, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do I have a second? All in favor? This meeting of the planning board is adjourned.